Hello everybody. Today is March the 25th, Wednesday. Ben Coley here with the ZEN of Ben, and just wanted to follow up once again on my disc that I sent President Obama regarding Allstate and the discrimination in Sanford with their algorithm that discriminates against people based on color and based on the red circle that they drew around the area, and the denial of insurance, excuse me, to these people who live in that same circle. And it just seems to me that by now he could have answered the letter, for heaven's sake. I mean, it's been over a month. You know, even if he didn't want to answer the letter, he could have simply said, "Look, Ben, I don't want to get involved." I think President Obama has a staff, and he could have written back a letter, and the letter could have said something like, you know, this is something that I don't want to get involved in. I'm the President of the United States, and this little matter of poor people being able to get insurance is something that's below me, and I don't really care if they discriminate, and so I don't care. And P.S. Send me a donation, or send Hillary Clinton a donation so that she can run for president, or screw off, or something like that, or thank you for writing me. We endeavor to answer all questions, but we don't fully understand, or we'll investigate it. It might take some time. I mean, you could have said anything, but I still haven't heard from you. And I would imagine, with the amount of money and staff you have, you could have at least answered the letter with a "screw you" or something like that. So you know what? I don't think you're doing your job. Matter of fact, I know you're not doing your job, because we are just so screwed up right now. And you know what? You know who's responsible when things get screwed up? The captain of the ship. It's always the guy at the top who's responsible for everything that happens underneath. And I got to tell you, you're the guy at the top right now, and you've been at the top long enough that you know, you should have a firm grip on the reins, but you don't. We're having our lunches eaten around the world. The Chinese and the Russians are cutting deals with all of the smaller nations around the world. We're losing our status as having the reserve currency status versus the brick and the yuan and the renminbi. People are buying gold because they're nervous that the dollar may collapse, but I don't think it'll happen. Maybe to people around the world it might, but I don't think it will to faithful Americans. But I also lay a lot of the blame on the lies that we're being told about the economy and those good high-paying jobs that just aren't out there for our college graduates. I mean, the kids are coming out of school today. They're brilliant. They went to school. They spent a lot of money, and they come out and they can't get that job other than maybe getting a job at McDonald's. And frankly, even McDonald's is not selling as many hamburgers now as they did 10 years ago. So look, you can look into that. I kid you not, they're selling less hamburgers now than they did years ago. Also, I noticed in the news that the former director of the Securities and Exchange Commission, John Ramsey, was grilled before Congress, and he says that the stock market is rigged. Well, are you kidding? I mean, it sure looks to me like it's been rigged for a while. You've got the stock market going up, and you've got the earnings of these corporations that are backing the stock going down, and you've got these insane mergers where one company is buying out another company for so much money, it just seems you wonder what in the world's going on. I guess somebody just gets a big commission out of it because the sale price of the company isn't worth what they're getting. The thing is rigged. You see, John Ramsey himself said that the market is rigged and the system is headed for a major correction one way or another. because of dark pools, high frequency traders, and the so-called plunge protection team. Are you kidding me? I mean, when the market wants to go down, that is capitalism. It goes down. It's called a correction. It goes down for a reason, and that provides an opportunity for other people to purchase the stock market and get more stock for less money, and then they can ride it back up. But if the market continuously rides up and up and up, and according to John Ramsey, eventually this plunge protection team and the rigging for the high frequency traders, where the actual Fed jumps in and buys when the stock market is headed for a correction to hold it up, at some point that's going to stop. And then everyone who put money in is going to lose. And the correction will be so big that it won't be a correction, it'll be a crash. And it'll be a crash bigger than what happened in 1929, because in 1929 you didn't have this kind of a rig. And now you've got the FDIC insurance backing the derivatives, so the big buyers of derivative trading can claim these as losses. So it's no different than, say, if I wanted to go to Las Vegas and gamble on the roulette table, and I lay down 36 to 1 odds on a number on the roulette table, and the number wins, and I win a lot of money, I walk out a winner, that's fine and dandy. But if I lose, then I can go crying to the Federal Depositors Insurance Corporation, and I can say, oh, I was gambling in commodities and I lost, and so pay me back. While at the same time, you've got the bail-in document signed, the same thing as they've got in Greece and now in some of these European nations. They borrowed a lot of money, and at any moment the government could declare an emergency. There could be the correction that John Ramsey's talking about, where we have no liquidity, and then all of a sudden the bail-in documents could be magically enacted, and everybody's bank account be seized, and there would be no FDIC insurance because the bailout documents were signed. And of course that doesn't make the mainline news, because we're all lied to. We're lied to directly, or we're lied to by flat-out omission. I mean, how many people know that that derivatives are insured? I mean, buying derivatives is, you know, you're not buying the actual item, you're buying the right to buy the item. It's like buying a put or a call option on a stock. Only you're buying a derivative, which it could be pork bellies, or it could be corn or wheat or gold futures. And then if it doesn't go your way, so in other words, these banks could say, well, I'm holding a certain amount of gold and I'm going to sell call options on the gold. That means that if the price of gold goes all the way up and you have the right to buy the gold for $900 an ounce, but it goes to $2,000 an ounce, you have purchased the right to buy the gold for $900 an ounce. But when you go to cash it in, the bank won't sell it to you, when the contract is supposed to give you the right to buy the gold for $900, and say in your particular instance. And when you ask for delivery of the gold, you have the money, and in the fine print on the derivatives today, it says that they have the right to settle in cash and not in. You know, we've got a monopoly going here with these banks anyway. I don't know why the antitrust rules aren't being pursued. These violations of antitrust and monopoly. What about the medications? You know, we just had a big go-around. We're very lucky we're able to fill one medication for my wife that she's been on because of her broken ribs. I mean, I worry about medication that I have to take that if I can't get, I'll die because of my thyroid, because of Fukushima or one of these local nuclear reactors that went. It's not just me. Many people in my area have to take the same medicine. Something happened. We were all irradiated, and the government never warned any of us to take precautionary measures, like to stay inside or something. You haven't done anything to protect the American people. And the economy is just going down, down, and down. If you're a government worker, I suppose you don't notice the difference. You get paid anyway. But I suppose at some point the government's going to run out of money. I guess they hit the debt ceiling, I think. The other day, I've been watching the news. I've been preparing, thinking about what I'm going to say. I haven't noticed what you're going to do about the debt ceiling. I guess you'll just borrow more money from the Fed. I mean, at some point, some of these issues that are causing the problem have to be addressed so that the problem doesn't continue until we have a terrible train wreck in the economy that's going to really hurt everyone just as much as if we were to have another world war, short of a nuclear war that would physically destroy the earth for good. We could have a monetary crash, an economic crash that would damage society for decades by the time there's enough faith returned to the system that normal life could resume. And our families, and we'll have to go through that, and our families will have to go through that. And what are you going to do? Oh, I think I know what you're going to do. You're going to call the Department of Homeland Security, and they're going to come running down our street. They're going to point M16s at our heads. And how is that going to solve the problem? Is that going to make the farmers plow the field faster? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when they can't get parts for their tractors? And there are so many laws on the books that we don't have any machine. We're not allowed to have a machine to fix the machine because there are too many laws. You know, I'm an insurance adjuster and an insurance agent by trade. I adjusted the big hurricanes of 2004, 5, and 6 in Florida. And we had tremendous damage. The hurricanes crisscrossed right over Orlando, right near where I live. They crisscrossed. They made an X, just like a bullseye, right over my house. I had a lot of business. My phone was ringing off the hook. I saw so many families that had damage. President Bush was the president, and FEMA, you know what FEMA was doing? They were telephoning people, and if your telephone worked, because remember, nobody had any electricity, the power was out. The wires were on the road. I had to drive my car over fallen 60,000 volt wires that were great big giant cables like this with my car and bump over these cables that you had to hope to God weren't still live wires in order to get to people's houses that you needed to adjust for damage. It's very dangerous. Many of these cases I never got paid for. Moreover, the lawsuits that were flying afterwards caused me to be in court for years. And by the time I got done paying for lawyers to go to court for years fighting over the money because I witnessed and was the adjuster, I ended up making nothing. But I still saved those people, and I collected them many dollars. And almost everyone that I dealt with was very, very satisfied and happy with the service I provide. But you always have a few people that you can't give them enough. You could give them more and more and more money. And I know there are people in the world that are greedy beyond belief. And the one thing I discovered after a short while was that you couldn't tell who was going to be the greedy one and who was going to be the thankful one. You couldn't tell. When you first started operating and helping these people, it seemed like they were going to be satisfied with whatever it was you gave them, and you paid them well, more than enough to fix their house. And then they would call back for a supplement, and they'd want more, and then they'd want more, and then they'd hire a lawyer, and then they'd want more. And you just didn't know which one was going to do that. There was no way of telling, and I'm pretty good at reading people. But I don't think it was the people. I think it was the lawyers pressing on the people that talked them into doing things like that. But not to get off the subject, I'm just saying I did help thousands of people get through the disaster. When Hurricane Katrina hit, I went to Louisiana, New Orleans. Man, have you been down there? Even now, the place is pretty wrecked up. You should have seen what it looked like after Hurricane Katrina went through. And the way that was handled was a mess. I'm an expert at handling these disasters. I wouldn't have handled it that way. Those people would have had clean water right away. They would have been encouraged to stay in place. I would have had the National Guard down there, but I wouldn't have disarmed the good people. No way. You had people there that had homes. Their homes were not damaged enough that they needed to move. Moving would have just been an inconvenience for them and an extra cost. And they just wanted to stay there and make sure nobody looted their house. Nevertheless, you had guardsmen come in and police come in and knock people down, push people around, honest people, and disarm them. And to this day, some of them still don't have their guns back. A judge had issued an order that they had to return the guns that they took. Some people couldn't. Some people did get their guns back because when they went down to the trailer, they had a trailer there to go back and get your gun back that was seized. The gun just wasn't there. I guess the government took it. Just like I think it's possible the government took my gun because it doesn't show up in the database as a stolen weapon, even though I turned the serial number in and the police were here when I came home from a vacation. Interesting. No receipt, no gun. Look, I have a message for the American people. I want there to be a strike of sorts. And I'm not talking about not going to work. I'm not talking about causing any trouble. I'm not talking about going into the streets. The strike I'm talking about is that no one in the United States will vote for an existing politician in the Senate or in the Congress. No one, whether they're good or whether they're bad, because we do know right now that we have a failing situation, and the only way we can be sure to clean this whole thing up is to vote everybody out. And I'm sorry, but I think some of the good ones may get thrown out with the bad, but I know the good ones would be willing to take the toss out, and I'm sure they could get a job, and they have a good pension, so I wouldn't be worried about them starving to death or anything like that. But for the sake of God and country, the ZEN of Ben, my strike, and I'm calling it. I'm calling on all the voters in the United States, do not allow any existing senator, president, congressman, friend of same, relative of same, or connection of any kind from the hip to run for office. Do not vote for them. Vote for someone new than what we have now, because what we have now we know is bad. At least if we vote in new people, we'll have a fresh start. And they'll want to create a good record. And we'll listen to the new people. And we'll make sure that they take the oath. And that they're oath keepers. We want oath keepers in the Congress and in the Senate. You know who I mean by the oath keepers? The people who promise to follow the Constitution. The sheriffs and the police officers and the ordinary citizens who raise their hand and agreed to abide by the U.S. Constitution. And then we're going to go line by line, every single law on the books in this country. And anything that doesn't smell like it passes the Constitution test, it's going to go. That's the only way we're going to get our country back the way it was before. And it's the only way we're going to win our friends back overseas, because, frankly, the people in the other countries are scared of us. I think they like us as a people, but they're afraid of our government. And who wouldn't be afraid? Just a week ago, I don't want to talk about it, but I have to. The sheriff's deputy in Volusia County, Florida, the next county over from where I live, conducted a SWAT raid on a group of young boys that were living in a house legally. And I guess they smoked marijuana. I don't think they were selling it or anything. I think they were just smoking it. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, a knock at the door. And the SWAT team was there in full gear. They probably looked like RoboCop or something. And pointed an assault rifle right at the 28-year-old boy's face, who was wearing only his underwear because it was 6 o'clock in the morning and he just woke up, and a t-shirt, and shot him in the face. Killed him instantly. Now I'm hearing about this too often. This isn't the only time this happened. It's happening over and over and over again. Fortunately, it doesn't happen here all the time, but it happens here. It's happening all across the country. The blame has to go somewhere, and it seems President Obama has got to tell the police that they will not shoot first. They are authorized to return fire. And with me as your leader, the police will only be authorized to return fire. They will not shoot first. They shoot first and they're going down. They will at the very least lose their job, and they will probably go to jail. They kill someone and it's a bad decision, they're going to go to jail. And they may go to jail for a full life sentence. They're paid well, they have good benefits, and they're trained very well. And if they don't want to take the job, then we'll put somebody else in there who can take the job. And frankly, I think that they shouldn't be SWAT teaming anybody's house. I think that that's just over the top. I just don't understand what the purpose of a SWAT team raid is. I want to serve a search warrant. I mean, so what? You can knock on the door with 2 police officers and say, we're going to search your house. You'd have 2 other police cars outside with the police standing outside. You've lost the trust of the American people, and you have lost the trust of the world. I heard today that the Saudis now are going to be dealing with the Chinese. They're going to sell their oil to the Chinese. I guess they're going to keep selling it to us, but they're going to sell oil directly to the Chinese. And I'm sure they're going to be selling it in yuan or bricks or renminbi. And then the Chinese are going to be building new modern refineries And what'll happen is we'll end up buying gas that's already refined from China, I suppose. Hopefully it'll be cheaper than the gas we have now. Maybe it'll give the consumer a break. But it's going to be at a loss of tens of thousands of jobs of Americans who work in refineries. It's almost like you're disassembling this country piece by piece. Why would they not want to deal with us anymore? The reason is they don't trust us. I would imagine that we probably lied to them too many times. And people don't like being lied to. They go on a handshake and maybe it had something in writing. Maybe the contract expired, I don't know, but for one reason or another, they're in there and we're not now. The whole Middle East is in turmoil. And every day you hear of drone attacks in Pakistan. In Pakistan. What in the world has Pakistan ever done to us? And civilians get killed all the time in these drone attacks. I mean, do you really know who you're shooting at? These people have minds and hearts and souls. Now, I know some of them are crazy, but if we have a relationship with Pakistan, why don't we just talk the Pakistani police into arresting them? Why do you have to just blow them up from the air and then you call them, this is the most insidious thing I've ever heard of, potential militants. What in the world is a potential militant? I suppose if you took a shotgun and you went out duck hunting during duck hunting season. When I was younger, I used to go duck hunting. And I had a shotgun. I only went a few times. I really didn't like doing it. But I went a few times. And if a drone were flying over, they would have seen me down there walking down the road with a shotgun, a 12 gauge, or hiding in a duck blind near the lake. And I suppose the drone could have sent a message back to China or wherever the hell the drone came from, or Pakistan, and said, we see a young belligerent boy with a gun. Not knowing that I was out and I was going to go duck hunting. Or maybe the crime is just so bad that people carry guns. I mean, we have the right to bear arms. Does that make you a belligerent that you bear arms? I think every effort should be made not to let a felon have a gun. But constitutional rights to bear arms shall not be infringed. Taking away all the bullets, I mean, that's infringement. You're eating away at the fringe rights to own a gun. That's infringing when you're taking away all the ammunition. And who's paying for this ammunition? And by the way, what's it being used for? Where is it? Where's it going? I mean, we're paying for this. We have a right to ask you these questions, and I think you have a duty to answer. I think you have a duty to answer my letter that I sent you a month ago. I mean, we pay you a lot of money. We give you good benefits. We call you Mr. President. You have a huge staff. You've killed innocent children and women and innocent civilians with your drones, not to mention the fact that you're laying depleted uranium all over the place and now you're poisoning the earth so that future generations will get cancer and can't live on the ground, poisoning the water. When when you said you didn't build that to the young entrepreneurs at that meeting years ago, you know, you really pissed off a lot of us, because I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and I could show you something I built. I mean, right here, see this? This is a photograph. Well, I'm sorry shaking around, but this is a photograph of the second story of a house looking down in a neighborhood that's a mixed neighborhood. And I bought that house as a practically condemned building in Lindenwold, New Jersey, on Cuthbert Road, North Cuthbert Road, Lindenwold, New Jersey. I bought it at a HUD repo. When I told you I was the HUD repo broker, I put a bid in. This is one of the homes I was able to secure. This home was boarded up when I bought it. It was a real wreck. Right over here is a brand new kitchen that I put in. I took the whole kitchen out. This is the living room. And you can see the beautiful flowers I have hanging from the ceiling, and the new carpeting I put in, the painting, and I put beautiful, natural, real wood paneling on the walls that goes diagonally. Turned out to be quite a bachelor pad. All the girls really liked it. The guys liked it too. Had a lot of good times there. Here I am sailing on a boat, a power boat that I bought for pennies on the dollar. We scuba dived off of. It wasn't running when I bought it. I fixed that up with my own two hands. And we went diving off it. We had a lot of good times on that boat. My old Mercedes-Benz out there is more than 20 years old. It breaks down every once in a while, and I fix it. My Allstate office, I sent you the disc. That building was damn near condemned, and you saw it. Did you? Unless you didn't look at the movie. It wasn't easy to make that movie because the tape that it came off of was so old. But you see, it looks like a brand new building inside, and you can see the Allstate goons scraping the name off the front of that building, because it took me a little longer to get my office open. And I therefore didn't have as much time to meet a quota that they wanted as the other agents had, who already rented brand new buildings. But I was on an upward trajectory. And I was over 40 years old, and I was in the process of having to close down a real estate office. It was going full blast at the time. They told me at the time I could keep going. And then they changed their mind. So I had to shut down a business while starting up a business, while rebuilding a condemned building, while going to school to get my securities license. And I'm a protected species. Being over the age of 40, I shouldn't have been thrown out so quickly, because that's age discrimination. Concessions were made for the other agents because they couldn't pass their securities tests. Well, I did while I was shutting down a giant real estate company. It was going full steam ahead, which I never should have, in order to help the people of Sanford. I taught the people of Sanford how to save by buying mutual funds that the other agents couldn't sell because they couldn't pass their tests. Yet even though they were younger than me and they had newer offices than I did, they weren't in the red area where the poorer people and the black people in Sanford lived. Now the EEOC, according to Senator Nelson, destroyed the file. You know why they destroyed the file without calling me? Because they didn't have the balls to call me to ask me what happened. They knew that what Allstate did to me was bad. But somebody took a payoff. Mr. President, it's your job to investigate these things. These are your people. These are the people that helped put you in office. The poorer people. The people who you claim were discriminated against all their lives, along with yourself. how hard it was growing up as a black man in America? You know, I would have thought for sure that you getting in there would have got some action on this subject matter. The American people are taking too much fluoride, and we're getting sprayed from the air with God knows what. When Vietnam was going, once we started to put two and two together and realized that the whole war was just a bunch of lies, we lobbied hard and we stopped it. And now you wonder why the Vietnamese are refueling the Russian bombers, long-range bombers. They could come here and bomb us. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do that earlier. Frankly, I'm surprised they let us go over there and they're so nice to us when we're over there. They seem to hold no animosity toward us, but they certainly have no problem with the Russians either. And then we have the brass cojones to say to the Vietnamese, don't do that. Don't fuel the Russian bombers. You know, the Russians helped support them when we were massacring them by the tens of thousands from the air, B-52s. The missiles that they used to shoot the B-52s down came from China and Russia, the technology. And the MiG fighter jets, and the AK-47s. They helped to fight us off, to get us off their property. It's admitted by the CIA that we murdered the president of South Vietnam because he didn't want to go along for the gig when it was starting up. That bad Tonkin thing. You know, now we're finding out that that was all bullshit. Was no attack. It was just an excuse to start up a war. Probably over the rubber trees. I guess Goodyear Tire Company in Firestone needed rubber for the tires for the cars, so they had the rubber trees there, so we wanted the rubber. I don't know. Maybe that's what it was. And then the Agent Orange. You sprayed the Agent Orange over there. Now, I know you weren't in power when this happened, but this is the long line of history of the United States. It goes all the way back to the Indians, who technically owned this country. They owned it when the Europeans showed up. The Indians owned this place. They just weren't smart enough to draw up a deed. Being a real estate broker, if I'd have shown up, I'd have made a deed. But they didn't make a deed. They didn't think they needed a deed. But the Europeans knew enough to put it in writing, and then they had some guy with a wig called a judge who said, his property belongs to you, the cowboy, and if the Indians come and wonder why their land is being used or taken or turned into agricultural land when they were shooting buffalo on it just the year before, and then they're getting shot at by Winchester rifles and the whole U.S. Army, they wonder what the hell's going on, and so they fight back, and then they're called savages. Well, today they would be called terrorists. It's the same old storyline, different geographical location. You know, it's the American mentality. We're going to take your property away and everything you own. You know, what are you going to say when you go face God and you're hoping to go into heaven instead of down to you know where? So what to do about it? Well, and get somebody like me in here who's got a lot of ideas, and someone who can sell the other countries on liking us again. But I've got the salesmanship skills. to resell the United States to the rest of the world. And the only way they're going to buy us is once they know our Constitution is restored and they can trust us. I'm afraid it's going to take a long time to get the rest of the world to trust us after what they've been through. From Vietnam. And that, how about the guitar company? What company was that? Fender that they went after because of the wood from Madagascar? Are you kidding me? These trees were dead. They had a license for the wood. Do you know how many trees were exterminated? The same kind of trees in Vietnam, teak trees, hardwood trees. They were exterminated by the billion with Agent Orange. And they still won't grow today. But now all of a sudden the United States wants to protect teak trees. I want to protect the teak trees. I wouldn't have killed the teak trees before. But you ruined that forest canopy. And now you're all upset about global warming. Well, you deforested Vietnam. The United States deforested Vietnam. Maybe we need to remind Al Gore. He was around when we deforested Vietnam. What was he doing about it? What about these nuclear power plants? You know, I had many years of college level physics. These nuclear power plants put out an awful lot of heat. They're like gigantic heaters. To cool off a nuclear power plant, you're heating the earth. Literally, you're directly heating the earth and the ocean and the water, whatever water they're using to cool the plant. Now, it's not putting the kind of emissions in the air that cause the solar entrapment of heat, but I'm talking about direct heat input into the environment, into the earth, into the biosphere. You're heating up the ocean by virtue of cooling the power plant. In Florida, the manatees gravitate in the wintertime toward these power plants. And if they shut it off for servicing or something in the middle of the winter, a lot of the manatees die. And then you know what they say? They blame it on the people with the fertilizing their lawn. And sometimes they make let out a small release, a radioactive iodine. It's a short-term isotope, and it harms the manatees. And then they have a heart attack. They don't get ill, they'll have a heart attack, or they'll have sores on their skin. And they say, well, the water's polluted. And they want to blame it on the people who live along the river, or the boaters. It's all bullshit. You lay off of the people, and you start looking at the big picture, and you're going to be better off. I'm talking to all the congressmen and the senators and the president. And I'm calling for a strike. I call on all Americans who are going to vote in the next election. Do not vote for any incumbent. Let the newbies in. They need jobs. You yourself, Mr. President, said if you don't like things or if they're not working out, run for office. Oh, yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to run for office. And we'll see how smart you are and if you can overcome this howitzer I have here. If you think you're so smart and you can out-debate a man with 11 Evergreen Awards, good luck. Because it ain't going to be easy. Anybody who stands against me trying to run is going to have a hard time. Assuming it's a fair election and I get just as much press as the next guy. Now, I'm assuming that wasn't going to happen. But if it does, I'll win. Because I have more ideas, and I know what time it is. I disconnected my cable TV years ago. I know what's going on. I know the real deal. I'm telling you, Mr. and Mrs. American, I promise you, you're going to have a better, happier country with new people. Even if you know your congressman, for the sake of your country, you're going to have to cut him loose. Don't worry, he has a good pension. Don't worry, he'll get a job in the private sector. Don't feel bad about voting for someone new, someone who's an oath keeper, someone who's going to go through the Constitution and every law on the books early on. I'm talking about within 90 days. To have every single law that's on the books scrapped that doesn't match with the Constitution. And all of these ridiculous signing statements and NDAA bullcrap and emergencies and the NSA. Or scrap the NSA. The NSA needs to have a congressional order countersigned by the Senate and signed off on by the President, and we're going to turn that place into low-cost living for people who are homeless. And we're going to have all the equipment taken out and burned. We'll do it right on TV live, pay-per-view, HBO. It'll be a hit. It'll actually pay for itself. How do you like that? We use Chinese oil from Saudi Arabia. Huh. Maybe we even use American oil to start the fire. And we're going to burn that equipment down. If I were you, I wouldn't invest too much more money into the NSA because it's going down. Not only that, but we have to save up the $1 million that we're going to pay Mr. Snowden for telling us about it. Because under my administration, we're going to give whistleblowers who blow the whistle on anti-constitutional actions done by government servants are going to get rewarded. They're not going to get penalized. They're not going to be indicted or thrown in jail. We're going to have a ticker tape parade for Mr. Snowden and anyone else who comes forward. And anyone who tries to start something up like the NSA or some similar organization, and we find out about it, they're going to be going to prison for 10 years, mandatory constitutional, mandatory violation. Just like you have mandatory drug jail, which by the way we're going to do away with, we're going to have mandatory constitutional violation jail, where the judge is going to say, I'm sorry, I can't withhold sentencing. You've got to go down for 10 years. You stopped XYZ company from selling guns to people who are legally allowed to buy them. Or you took away a gun from someone who was supposed to have a gun. You're a police officer, you took a gun away from someone who was allowed to bear a gun. He wasn't a felon, you took his gun away because you were scared or something. Don't care if you're scared. He's a police officer. He's paid to be scared. If he doesn't like his job, he can quit. You need to serve a high-risk warrant. Find somebody who's willing to do it without going to the front door and battering it down with a bunch of gun-toting guys. I think I could find a team of 5 or 6 people who'd be willing to go there completely unarmed and knock on the door and talk sense to whoever's in there to come out. Or raid the house when it's empty. No more SWAT team raids. That's ridiculous. I don't think they even do it in other countries. It's just a recipe for disaster. Anybody could call up the police and say, I think this or I think that. What, then SWAT team's going to show up with no evidence, nothing from a judge signed? How about these peeping snoops around where the police can just come and go? The chief of police of my own town told me that every day they go into someone's house and look around and leave. In and out, quick, 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 and the owner doesn't know they were ever there. Now, what's that all about? See, under my administration, that'd be a severe violation. That'd be 5 to 10 years in prison, mandatory, just like a drug sentence. It'd be a mandatory. It'd be like getting caught with 50 tons of cocaine, as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, cocaine and every other drug's going to be legal. You just can't drive stoned. And all these people are in jail for taking drugs because it makes them happy. As long as they say they took it because it made them happy, they're in conformity with the Constitution and therefore need to be let out. They're not criminals. And if they sold it, they're in conformity with the right to be industrious. And what about the drug shortage, the FDA drug shortage on real drugs? That's your fault and it's on your back, and anyone who dies because they can't get legal drugs, I'm blaming it on you. And as a representative of the American people, I think everyone behind me will blame it on you. Because you're commander-in-chief, you're responsible for what's going down around here, man. It's not good. The DEA themselves on the telephone the other day told me there is a true drug shortage. I just saw on the news yesterday that they don't have enough drugs to give lethal injections to people. So now they're going to have to start shooting people because they don't have enough drugs to give a lethal injection. I don't understand it. I mean, they give lethal injections to animals every day. They put them out of their misery, but they don't have a lethal injection for a human. Everything that's happening that's bad around the world is somehow tracking back to you, Mr. Congressman, Mr. Senator in power right now, and Mr. President. It's all coming back to you because you're not doing your job. You're derelict in your duty. And yet you put that poor captain in prison for not pushing the red button to start a nuclear war because she thought there's something wrong. And you asked her to nuke Russia, and she said no and didn't push the button, and now she's in jail. What's the matter with you? Don't you want officers that think? Or do you want a bunch of morons that just follow orders like zombies and we'll get another, Nazi-style Gestapo, Hitler, Germany going here? All right, folks. Had enough for today. Look, donate money so we can get the cause on the internet, and call me too. I like to talk to people. Please call. And Benji, if you hear me, my son Ben, Josh, give me a call. Give me a call, kids. I want to hear from you. I don't hear from you enough. I love you. Thanks. Night.